So from matter, from pattern, from security, from stability, from structure, we then get the Hierophant. The Hierophant is also structure, but I like to think of the Hierophant as like a pyramid. So we have the diamond of the base of the pyramid, and then from all four corners, from that stability, from that security and stability that we find in the home, we can then gather from all four corners upward to a point, and point upward toward I wouldn't necessarily see greater or higher things. That's often how it's described, but things that are a little bit beyond the basic necessities of existence. We can start to explore instead of just being concerned about being fed and being sheltered and being cared for. We can start to explore our spirituality, our reason for existence, and this is the start of religion. All religions basically started as a quest for our spiritual selves, and then they kind of solidified and got structural. So they moved from the point, instead of the movement upward toward the point from this structured base. Organized religions can tend to move from the point downward to the structured base and make the structured base more solid. And that's, I think, where we struggle. But that structured base, that organized, methodical stuff is necessary for us to grow. We have to have a base from which to build. It just depends on what direction, whether we lose sight of the direction or we keep that direction toward our spiritual growth. So that's the Hierophant. The Hierophant can get stuck in the structure, the orthodoxy, the system of how things have always been done. The Hierophant, the heir, the heiress, the heirs of the religion, the heirs of the tradition. So things being passed on, not just from mother and father, but culturally down to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. That's the heir. And heirlooms, things being passed down. But sometimes we get stuck in the idea that just because something was done always the same way, that it always has to be that way. That traditions are traditions not because they're the best way, but they're traditions because they're just the way they've always been done. And so our struggle sometimes with the Hierophant is when we're told, well, this is how it's always been done, and yet we understand, well, maybe there's a better way, maybe there's something, and that's actually also the Hierophant. The Hierophant is stepping out of the box. It's beyond the 4, it's the 5. An attempt to see outside of that, and yet within organized theosophy, we sometimes get stuck in the system, and it becomes more emperor-like and less Hierophant-like. But that's all kind of theoretical, I guess. So back to the symbols within the card, we also have the crossed keys, like the Hierophant in more traditional depictions. The Hierophant also usually has a staff, carries a staff with 3 or sometimes 4 rings. So those are the 4 rings. When it's 3, it's only the top 3, and then the staff is the 4th ring down. But in the middle, we have this intuitive, sensitive aspect that expands outward. So the containment is in the intellect. The containment is in the wisdom and air realm, where the containment in the emperor was in the earth realm. Here it's contained by the mind. And so that's also talking a little bit about the restrictions that our mind places on things. And some of those restrictions are necessary, just like the restrictions, the physical restrictions of a home, four walls around a home, and holding things in structurally, the mind also requires some of that structure and those restrictions to hold things in, to contain things. And yet, that the mind's ability to structure and hold things is potentially more fluid. Because it's at the air realm, it can be broken down more easily. At the same time, because it's broken down more easily, here's where duality is really fun, because opposites are always true. It's kind of one thing is true, and then its opposite is also true. So at the same time, air, because of its intangibility, we grasp onto it. We try to hold, because it's intangible, we try to hold even more firmly to it, and it makes it more stable and more structured and more stuck sometimes. And it's that holding on to ideas that can make some organized religions or some institutions, that idea of, oh, the Hierophant's the strict institutional thing. But it's actually in trying to hold on to the intangible, trying to hold on to ideas. And when we see the other side of the Hierophant, when we see that it's actually air, it's actually mind stuff, and mind is fluid, and mind is unbounded, we can actually develop a lot of freedom. And yet, that structure is necessary. As we learn things, we need a reference point. We need a way to navigate through things. And so that's the structure, the four that's contained in the five. And the crossed keys are where our intuition, our inner sense, our inner sensitivity of things, our feeling and emotional realm, our sensations of things, cross and are sometimes at a crossroads with our mind, with our intellect. How we feel and how we think, we're often debating between the two. They cross over. But again, with all of the previous dualities lower down in the major arcana, the magic is in that crossover, in that in-between, between the two opposites, between thinking and feeling. And the magic is really there. So that's the crossed keys. And the crossed keys, they're another threshold. Just like the Empress kind of sits at the threshold between the masculine and feminine, the doing and the feeling, and is at that threshold between the twos, the Hierophant is at the threshold between the 4 and the 6, the home and the community, the self world and the broader world around us. So that's the Hierophant.